Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle.
Welcome, everyone. I'm your guest host, Dr. Kristine Goins, and I'm thrilled to introduce our esteemed guest today, Dr. Kiera Barr. Dr. Barr is an innovator in somatic dermatology, a field that recognizes the profound impact of skin conditions on mental and emotional well-being. With her expertise as a dual board certified dermatologist and somatic trauma therapy practitioner, Dr. Barr is dedicated to addressing the psychological and emotional aspects of skin health. Today, we're diving into the transformative field of somatic dermatology, exploring how it can heal the connection between mental health and skin health and empower individuals to feel more confident and at ease in their own skin. Welcome, Kiera.
I'm excited to dive into this conversation. I think it's such a good blend between the two of us, right? Skin health, mental health, they are inextricably linked.
Absolutely. And could you start by just sharing more about the concept of somatic dermatology and how it intersects with mental health?
Yeah. Okay. So people are probably like, say what now? Right? Most people may not be familiar with somatics. Like I've put those together. This is not a field that actually exists yet. That's why we're here, right? To try and push the envelope. But the field of psychodermatology does exist. It's a subspecialty of both dermatology and psychology, psychiatry. And it really came about because the skin and the brain are embryologically linked. They're derived from the same layer of embryologic tissue. So they are communicating with each other constantly. So, I mean, in real time, when we have sweaty palms, we're flushing when we're talking in front of a crowd, that is your brain and your skin talking to each other. It really is as our largest and most visible organ. It is kind of our identity, how people judge us and see us. And so our skin health can affect our mood, and our mood can affect our skin. Our skin kind of expresses, it's a window to and reflection of everything that's happening below the surface. So that's just kind of how they come together on a biologic level, but it goes much deeper than that as well.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that because it really just helps us to see, even if we haven't thought all the way back to medical school and really remembering that profound connection, right, between the brain and our skin, our largest organ. So, what inspired you to pioneer a body-based trauma healing approach to skin health?
You know, it's so funny. Like when I think back to over 20 years ago, dating myself, of when I applied to dermatology, the essay I wrote actually to get into derm was all about the mental and emotional aspect. It really was, especially those of us who are socialized as women, that our appearance is always a source of people love to judge us, criticize us, and our measure of our worthiness oftentimes is attached to our appearance. And it can, if you don't fit the stereotypical norm, which I did not, with my hair is back now, but like my frizzy brown hair and my short stature, like I didn't fit the mold of like the ideal perfect woman. And when you don't and you're criticized and judged for it, it can make you feel really uncomfortable in your skin, right? So that idea of it's not just what the skin looks like, but how we feel in it. And that was kind of a through line throughout my entire career. Then my own health fell apart. And I actually had to diagnose myself with early melanoma. That had been the focus of my practice, skin cancer melanoma. And my skin was changing, early melanoma, and then it was gut issues, hormonal issues. Health totally fell apart. And I went to all our colleagues, various different practitioners, and no one was connecting the dots between the symptoms I was experiencing and what was happening. So I was getting more prescriptions and pills. I was trying every diet and every protocol. Nothing was really working until I kind of stumbled my way into mind body medicine, and all the dots started to connect. That the common theme behind all of my symptoms, between the stress, the skin, the hormone imbalances, the common thread was chronic and traumatic stress. I didn't realize that at the time, but it was, you know, all the stressors. It was the ultraviolet light from being outside and running ultra marathons. It was the over exercising. It was working in academics. It was not feeling valued in the job that I had and juggling a family and career and all the things. And it really led me to this discovery of the impact that chronic stress has on our physiology, on our psychology, and all of that gets expressed on the surface of our skin. Or it can
Wow,
for
for sure. And just to hear you talk about just your story and your symptoms and how, this constellation, right, was happening all at once, and that you went to even your closest colleagues and it was hard for them to pull the pieces together, which, this is, I mean, you're all experts, right, in this field. So I'm just wondering if you can discuss some of maybe the common misconceptions about the relationship between skin health and mental well-being.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is we just weren't taught, you know, in the traditional Western medical model, we have siloed the body, right? The mind is disconnected from the body. And right, I'm dermatology, my husband's ortho, there's gastroenterology, there's rheumatology, and everyone has their subspecialty. And we forget that we are one unified body with systems that are interconnected. And I think we overlook the fact that there's this nice network, right? Neuro, immune, cutaneous, endocrine, they're all connected. And the nervous system is kind of like the lead domino. And when that becomes dysregulated from various stressors and our capacity to navigate those stressors gets overwhelmed, we respond in an adaptive way, right? Stress is not an inherently a bad thing. It's really a survival important process. But what happens is that we have this response and we're supposed to like have the response and things kind of, you know, we deal with it and we go back to normal, but most of us get stuck in these survival coping strategies and our immune system, you know, stays hyperactive, and then that throws our hormones out of balance and there's downstream effects, and we forget that there's this very intimate connection between all of our symptoms. And so when people say, no, I'm feeling anxious, we think maybe it's just in your head, but it's actually often it's not. It's actually a whole systemic process.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking about, you mentioned that communication that sometimes as physicians we can have, or even thoughts we can have about certain patients, it being all in their head. And so I'm wondering with that, like, how can we effectively communicate to individuals or our patients that are experiencing different stress induced skin conditions, for instance, like urticaria, that their condition may be influenced by these psychological factors without unintentionally dismissing, right, the legitimacy of their symptoms and concerns.
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? Because as humans, we have some basic needs, right? We all want to be seen, we all need to be heard and understood. So I think normalizing and acknowledging and validating that what they're experiencing is real. That is their experience. We are not here to discount. Like, how do we, talk about this with our colleagues? It's really hard. Like, because this is not necessarily part of our primary training. I have many of my colleagues who feel like discussion of these aspects is not their responsibility. It's not in their bandwidth, nor do they have a desire. And so the patient suffers. So that being said, we know that upwards of 90% of all doctors' visits are for stress-related issues. Stress is definitely going to play a role in the vast majority of conditions. Skin issues are among the number one reasons people go to the doctor behind like pain. So we have to at least acknowledge and just offer that, even not to point the finger always at stress, but oftentimes just normalize the conversation. Stress oftentimes can be a contributing factor to a lot of skin conditions. What's been going on in your life lately? How is like hives in particular affecting your day to day? There's recent studies on the role that childhood trauma plays in chronic urticaria specifically. So And there are other conditions as well where our early childhood experiences can, I guess, what we call our window of capacity can kind of our capacity to navigate stressors, that it can kind of close that window down a little bit and affect us into our adulthood. Hives is one condition in particular. So we have to recognize that. And at least, even if it's not in your scope of practice or feel comfortable with, letting the patient know that, what you're experiencing is real. And also, normalizing that stress can be a contributing factor, and being curious from a place of compassionate curiosity, inquiring how this is affecting them, so that even if you're not the one to treat them, perhaps you cultivate your village of referrals that you could refer this person out so that they can get the care that they deserve.
That is really, really helpful. And so it sounds like one of the things to do is first acknowledge that there is this connection and, having the openness to see it when it shows up, in our practice and in people that come to us. And also staying in that place of curiosity, asking about how, people's, whether it's psychological, whether it's their social environment, environmental aspects of their lives, like how these things are coming up, how stress is playing a role in their lives at that time. And even if we're not the ones to maybe treat it directly, just being able to have those resources on hand so that they can get the help and the treatment that they need. Are there other practical strategies or techniques from somatic dermatology that all physicians can start to integrate into their practice to just better support their patients?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just to backtrack just a little bit, when we talked about like the interplay between skin health and mental health. Yes, the skin and the brain are intimately connected, derived from the same layer of tissue. And when we think about the stress response, we oftentimes think of it as a top down, like it's the brain sending signals to through the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and then increase in inflammatory signaling. What many people may not know is your skin actually has its own HPA axis. So this is part of why there is this connection, because the skin is both a target and a source of the stress response. So that's another reason of kind of like just kind of a fun fact curiosity to even talk about with your patients, right? Like, this is actually really normal why this is happening, because your skin actually, when you're stressed, it picks up those cues. It actually can create its own stress hormones and inflammatory signaling. So just like normalizing it is one. But I think the other thing of practical strategies is, we know that stress can create dysregulation in our nervous system. And as the physician, as the practitioner, you have an opportunity. Just, we were taught in medical school that the skills that we need to learn are clinical pathologic correlation, writing the right prescription, like diagnostic, and creating a treatment plan. When in fact, the most important skill that you bring into your interaction with your patient is your presence and your intention of presence. So this is where doing our own healing work, our own kind of clearing out our own stressors and stored emotions and trauma can be really important. This is why I work with physicians as clients, as well as people struggling with skin issues, because it's our own presence and being there for someone, witnessing them, holding space for them when they are in a time of need, so that that individual sitting across from you feels seen, heard, and held, because you might be the only person that they can talk to about how much this is impacting their life. So through the tone of your voice, through your own body language. A lot of times, I'm sure you experience this too with your patients. They're so spun up, right? They're going really fast. So even with your own kind of, we mirror each other. We can co-regulate or we can co-dysregulate. So when you notice the person sitting in front of you amping up, you can bring the pace down. You can change the prosody of your voice, the tone of your voice, the volume of your voice. And you'll watch your patient just go, like, you don't have to do much, but it's paying attention to what's happening inside of you as you're witnessing what's happening in front of you with your patient.
Absolutely. Just that idea of being still, listening, and being in the present moment, with our patients, which, as you said, it really does take that work also of not being in a rush and not having that sense of urgency that many of us can have in certain settings as physicians when, we're being made to see certain patients in a certain amount of time, or, just certain environments, clinical environments that really make it difficult to really express that presence in a way that can be supportive and calming for the patient and the best interest of the therapeutic connection. So
Yeah.
I
And
appreciate
even if,
those.
yeah. And even if you don't have a lot of time, right? And it also takes, this doesn't have to take a lot. And the second part is sometimes you're really dealing with a difficult scenario and you may not know what to do, right? You don't have the game plan. You might not have the differential diagnosis. You're not really sure what to do. Hopefully this approach may help take some of that pressure off, because oftentimes what that person in front of you actually needs is just space and time to be heard. And you could always revisit, right? Like maybe we need to set up a follow-up appointment and dive into this a little bit deeper. But in the meantime, maybe you recommend a podcast or a book or a resource or something that can be supportive and schedule a follow-up. It gives both of you time and space to come back together when you do feel crunched for time.
Absolutely. And I love those recommendations or suggestions. Being able to have the space to kind of figure things out, but then also leaving the patient with something of support in the meantime. Your presence and then something else that they can read or listen to that can really offer that other piece of psychoeducation around what it is they're experiencing. And speaking of time and space, I think about, my one of my main experiences, and I know a lot of physicians really love to travel. And so I'm wondering, just in your experience of kind of taking that time, that space to do things like travel, how does travel impact skin health? And any advice you could offer there for people who are experiencing, skin conditions and traveling?
Yeah, for some people, traveling is like the cure all, right? They're getting out of their stressful home environment and they're leaving that behind. And some people might find that their skin, oh my goodness, without the daily stressors of my daily life, my skin clears up. That being said, right, we are creatures of habit. So knowing that you may be transitioning to a different environment, really setting yourself up for success. What are the things that you actually need to create a felt sense of safeness for yourself, right? When it comes to regulating our nervous system, we have three essential needs, right? One is slowing down, right? That is wired into our DNA. We are not meant to be in a hustle culture. The second is connection. And the third is a felt sense of safety. And in service of our survival, that third one will always take precedence. We are always scanning our environments for threat and danger. So connecting to others is going to fall behind. Slowing down and taking our time with things is going to fall away when we feel like we're under threat. So what, as you're traveling, might you need to create a felt sense of safeness for yourself? Is it bringing, your favorite eye mask? I traveled recently. I brought my pillow for the first time and it made the world of difference. So I could sleep well. Like sleep, it's not just like quote unquote beauty sleep. Sleep is so powerful and potent for the restoration, rejuvenation, and healing of skin health, because it is when your hormones are balancing, cortisol is going down, your primary hormones going down, melatonin is increasing. Melatonin is one of the most potent antioxidants the body can produce for skin rejuvenation, for hair growth, for so many other functions. This is why it was being used during the pandemic. It's now being added to a lot of skincare products. And so we need that restorative sleep at night. So whatever you can do to help soothe yourself, to prepare yourself with essential oils, to help to use a little aromatherapy, maybe blackout curtains or things, or if you don't in the hotel room, or your eye mask, right? Things that your creature comforts that you know that you're going to need for a felt sense of safeness inside the skin of yours. And then, there are certain outside in things to protect your skin, right? You don't know what the water quality, if it's going to be hard water or soft water. So using gentle cleansers, having your moisturizers, always having your sun protection, your SPF 30 or above, sunscreen, things like that. But I think it's more of how can you create that felt sense of safeness for yourself as you're traveling to a new environment. And that's going to look different for everybody.
That is so like revealing because I have a history of eczema. And when I moved abroad and really began to experience time freedom and working less than 20 hours a week, my eczema just went away. Like it literally just went away. And I think about what you're saying, like I slowed down so much, I really had time for, moment to moment awareness and being present to really connect more with my, community, my new environments that I was experiencing and having that sense of safety as well. I think about candles are like my thing. Like everywhere I go, I have candles. And so I never really use lights at night because I like to really kind of prepare my body for sleep. And so as the sun is going down, I light my candles and those are my like that's my safe space. So
Yeah.
I really love that. That's so helpful.
Yeah. I mean, for eczema, especially, stress is a very common trigger. Same with rosacea, same with psoriasis, hair loss. Most skin conditions are going to be triggered or exacerbated by stress. So it's so fascinating, right? Like you learn these, we inherently know this, but then when you're able to take yourself out of an environment and you're like seeing it for yourself, it really is potent. It's potent medicine. And the thing is, it was always inside of you, right? It was just a matter of you having the wherewithal and capacity to tap into it, right? By really pursuing your passion, your dream of being the nomadic physician and then guiding other people to be able to do the same. I think that has a lot to do with it when we can just these micro moments of pleasure, right? What are the things that we can do? Whether it's, for me, self touch is huge. We have these C tactile fibers on our skin that are directly linked to parts of our brain that regulate our emotions. So a gentle touch just soothes me, just becoming aware of my breath, right? A lot of times when we're stressed, we hold our breath, right? We're bracing for impact. So just awareness of your breath, slowing your breath, an extra long exhale to tap into that parasympathetic activation. Simple things. It doesn't have to take a long time, especially for busy clinicians, right? As you have your hand on the doorknob into your next exam room, just feel your feet on the ground. Just noticing your breath, maybe take 2 to 3 breaths and then walk in, right? When you're washing your hands, even feeling the water, the temperature of the water on your hands, just allowing yourself to be brought back into the present moment. These are simple things that you can do throughout your day to resource
Wow.
yourself.
I love that. It's like periods of just grounding and coming back
Mhm.
into the now.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating, really beautiful. I'm wondering how you see the field of dermatology really evolving with approaches like somatic dermatology.
Yeah. Well, listen, I live on an island in the Pacific Northwest. I often feel like I'm on an island. I am N of one at the moment doing this. And I even posted in a Facebook group and I got a lot of pushback because this is new. This is not something that we were taught. And sometimes things that are new feel a little threatening, a little unfamiliar. I think it has the potential to transform how we practice medicine in general because we are just coming home to like what's already this wisdom that's already here. This is not to replace medicine. We have come a long way and medicine may be necessary. But for the longest time, it's been a this or that kind of approach. My invitation is can we make it a both and? We may need the medication, but we also need to focus on nutrition and lifestyle factors and sleep. And 80% of the signals that direct our thoughts, our sensations, and emotions are from the body to the brain. Only 20% are really from the brain to the body. So if we are only using a top down talk therapy approach, if we are only trying to think our way out of things, we are missing the vast majority of how our body is wired to heal itself. So we have to have a both and approach. And so my hope is that people will be more open as you're washing your face, as you're applying your serums. Can we bring more focus to the present moment? Can we feel our feet on the ground? Can we ground? Can we use, intentional touch, using our breath, using everything that's at our disposal so that we're truly nourishing ourselves from the outside in and the inside out with every practice that we're doing.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, of course, as a psychiatrist, cannot agree with you more, right? Especially being integrative, in my approach as well. So, I mean, I just want to congratulate you because it's not easy to be an innovator, right? It's not easy to bring something new to a field, and especially, being physicians, there's a lot of tradition in this particular field and industry. And so, having the courage, right, to bring forth something new, a new idea, a new approach, a new way of thinking is truly a beautiful thing. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes and how it changes dermatology and medicine as a whole.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, it is hard to be an innovator, especially because it's not like I'm selling a product. This is not necessarily like big industry money. However, my intention is to do studies that look at drug optimization. Can we use medicine, layering on these somatic practices, right? This intentionality to improve outcomes. And so I'm not trying to replace anything. I'm trying to add to. I look to my mentors, right? I swim in the sea of like with all the psychologists. I'm like the only physician in the group. And I look to my mentors like Peter Levine and, Pat Ogden, and they're in their 80s. I'm like, all right, it's going to take another 30, 40. All right. I'm being smart. I hope it doesn't take that long. But I realize this may be a long game. But the more we can talk about it and people can experience it for themselves. This is why it is experiential. This is why I love working with, I've taken groups of physicians through my programs. I love working with individuals because, again, your role as a physician, your presence, like their burnout is an all-time high. These are things that'll help soothe your own nervous system, help you deal with your own stresses and frustrations that are legit working in a broken healthcare system. You need tools yourself in order to keep doing the work, right? We can't pour from that empty cup. So it's kind of something that really is needed on both sides of the equation, both for the clinician and the practitioners to better serve their patients, and then these practices for their patients to feel more comfortable and more confident and ease in their own skin.
Absolutely. And I feel the passion that you have for this. So I think less than 30 years is what I'm. But Dr. Barr, I so appreciate you, taking the time to share your expertise and your experience with us today. And before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners who really want to enhance their skin health and their mental well-being?
Yeah, I think if you can throughout the day, slow things down a little bit, right? Go outside, get some sunshine in, at least it's summertime in the Northern Hemisphere. Do something every day that sparks a little bit of joy, whether it's watching a funny video, hugging your pet. Movement is medicine, right? A little dancing, a little walking, something every day that sparks a little joy for yourself will go a long way for your mental health, and your skin will reciprocate in kind.
Beautiful. Well, this is one of my sparks of joy for the day. So thank you. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And for those who are wanting to learn more from the amazing Dr. Barr, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah. So on Instagram, Dr. Kiera Barr, I actually put together a skin healing guide, really kind of the foray into nervous system regulation. So if people are curious and they're just like, yeah, I want to learn a little bit more, I've got a guide that you can find on my Instagram bio as well. And it's really a nice foray, things that you can do on your own. And if you need additional support, I'm here for it. But I want to make this accessible to everyone because you're just tapping into what's already within you.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. That concludes today's episode of the Physician's Guide to Doctoring. thank you for joining us. Dr. Barr's insight and expertise in somatic dermatology has been extremely impactful.
Thanks for listening. So please share it, or like it, or comment on a social media post, or write us a 5-star review. Thank us again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.